Hi, I'm Bonnie Krebs from Art Impressions. I am the artist and owner of Art Impressions rubber stamps, and today I'm going to walk you through our watercolor series. So this watercolor line is a little different than regular stamping, and that's one of the things I love about it. And for you out there that think you're not an artist and would love to learn how to watercolor, this really is for you because it's really structured. It's a great way to learn to paint, and there's some counting and some rules and lots of structure. So I know that makes you feel a little more comfortable hearing that. So these little elements are made to stamp in a specific way, and I'm going to kind of show you how to do that. We're going to do a couple of projects, but I kind of want to walk you through the basics so that you understand the concept. So first of all, let me tell you what's involved. So really all it is a rubber stamp. So a little rubber stamp like this on a clear block, a water-based marker, and I'm using Marvy markers. I'm a little partial to those, but you can use a water-based marker and watercolor paper. So it's really important to use watercolor paper and not cardstock. So it really doesn't take much. It only takes a few markers, and really this is the easiest, fastest, funnest way to watercolor. You are going to love this. I love it. And of all the things that I've created, this is definitely one of my favorites because of all my left brain people out there who think they're not artists. You can really do this. This is made for you. Okay, so let me show you how it starts. So really what I want to explain first is how these little elements work. So the watercolor series is sort of a collection. So think about it that way. When you buy into this line of stamps, you're buying a collection, and you want to start with the basic elements. So these little things, the basic flower set, the basic foliage set, these things are in everything. So I come back to them over and over. Every time I add a new set, every time I add a new collection, I'm going to come back to these two. So they're those common stamps that are going to be used in every single project. Okay, so that's why you want to start with these. After you have these, you can do any project that's in our entire watercolor catalog. And as the new ones come out, you can still do every project that we do with these once you have these. So they mostly consist of, in the foliage set, the grasses, the vines, the large foliages for foregrounds, the small foliages for backgrounds. And then in the flower set, 2 long stems, 2 fillers, and these little accents. And so I'm going to kind of explain the basics on how to do that, and we'll kind of see more about how to do that later on. So let me just show you what I mean by how these work. So we're going to use a marker. I use a marker for everything. So this is the little vine, and let me just show you which one this is. Okay, so that's this one right here, the little vine. And we're going to ink it up with a marker. So you just color on this stamp with the side of your marker. So the side of the brush tip. And you don't want to just, first of all, mash it into your paper like that. You want to stamp it in a repeat, and this is really important. So count 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So that you're getting a dark to light. And what happens when you add water to this is that dark image comes forward and the light fades back. And you have a 3-dimensional image. You would not get that with this. You've got to stamp it in the repeat like this, and it will automatically do its thing. Once you've stamped it like that, now you dip your brush in water, pinch it off so it's not too wet, and dab. So you're just dabbing now at this image. And you can see how it all just kind of blends together and looks like a little painting. That's really as simple as it is. It's just a matter of stamping it in the repeat and adding water to what you've just stamped. Let me show you another one. Here's a little one from the flower set. This is a little filler flower right here, the little daisy. And we're going to ink that. And I'm just using this little violet stamp. So instead of trying to fit it into your image like this, we want to ink it and we want to stamp it in a repeat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now we have that dark to light image. And when we add water to that, we're going to get that 3-dimensional image. We don't want to see the harsh lines of that stamp anyway. So we want to just touch it with our brush, leave some white areas, and you'll see when we put this together that it all just kind of comes together. Let me show you one more. This is a long stem. So this is from the new flower set. So this one right here, all the long stems work the same. Everything follows the same rule, which is also really comforting. So I'm using 2 colors on this. I've used the green on the stem, so the 72 green, and that purple again, number 8. And now I'm going to stamp it, guess how many times? 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I've got dark to light. And when I add water to that now, it just really pops that color out, and it changes the shape of the stamp so that it looks like a watercolor image. It just really, really works. So let's kind of put all this together now. So let's do our first project. And I'm going to use a set of containers from the Rustic set. This is one of our newer releases. So let's start with this old kind of tree trunk here and incorporate that into our little project. So we're going to start out by stamping that. I'm going to use 2 colors. So I'm going to use the number 86 African Violet. I'm going to ink that first. And then I'm going to use the number 45 Sepia. This is kind of the magic color. This is the color of dirt. And it really, really makes things look 3-dimensional. So 2 colors on that. So this is going to give us an old weathered tree trunk, kind of a more of a grayish brown look. So now I'm going to dip my brush in water and pinch it off again. That's always the first step. And this time we're only stamping it one time. So you have your basic image, whether it's a little structure or a pot or a tree trunk, it always starts this way. This is always your starting point. Stamp that basic image on your watercolor paper and pull the color out of the lines. So that's what we're going to do. Pinch our brush off and start by pulling this color out. Drag it outside of the lines. So just like this. And you can see that color will kind of bleed out. You just kind of drag it out. The lines are all placed there for color. So now let's go ahead and add a little character to it. So I'm going to use one of these little bunnies. And you can see on this, here's a really good example of what I mean by the collection, because you can see this image on here. So here's a little bunny in this little tree trunk, and it's got all these flowers and foliage around it. But in the set, it's only these bunnies. And that's because we go back to the flowers and foliage always. Back to the little grasses, back to the flowers and foliage from that first set. So you're going to add to your collection. In order to use these, you still need to have these basic images. Okay, so let's go on to the next step, and that would be, let's add our little bunny into there. So I've got this little guy, and I don't want him floating in the air. I don't want to guess where he's going. So I'm going to use my little positioner. And I'm going to ink him in the sepia. And I'm going to place a little plastic shield into the corner. And I'm going to just stamp it in here just like that. And now I can see through it. So I can see through it up here. And I can see, okay, that's exactly where I want that little bunny to be. So I'm going to place the L back in there, right into the corner, and re-ink this one more time. And I'm using that sepia again. And I'm just going to stamp it into the corner. And I'll get this right exactly where I want it. So he's sitting on that little tree trunk. And I'm going to dip my brush in water now and pull the color out of the lines again. And I'm just gonna pull a little bit out. Now you can see on here that the lines are way thinner and smaller. And that's because you don't need a lot of color on here. This little guy doesn't need a lot. So let's go on to the next step. So let's add our foliages and flowers in. And remember how to do that. That's on a repeat. So we want to stamp that a bunch of times. So I'm going to ink that vine again. And I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the thing about these two is you can ink the parts that you want. When you're using a stamp and a marker, you can ink just the tip, you can ink the whole thing, or you can ink just part. So I've got this in 2 times now, and now I'm just going to dab. And you can see already that it's starting to look like a little watercolor painting. So let's go on to the next step. And let's take that little filler flower now, and let's add some more color to this. So I'm going to use a blue. So this is Prussian blue. And you can see on here, this is a pretty big stamp. And I'm kind of putting it in the background here. So I'm only going to use a couple. So make sure that that's cleaned out. This is how I clean my stamps, by the way. This is why my hands are always inky. But you just want to ink a couple of those. And remember, in a circle, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Even if you just ink a few. So you can see that we have that 3-dimensional look of the flowers. We don't see the harsh lines of the petals. We just see the flower as a whole. And that's really what watercolor is. It's kind of abstract. And we don't want to see the harsh lines of anything. We want to just see the idea of things. So we want the idea of these blooms in the background. And you can see that little project's finished. See how quick and easy that was? So let's go on to another project. So I kind of showed you how to put a container set together. So a basic container with flowers and foliage or something inside it. So this time I'm going to show you how to do a little structure. So there's lots of sets of these, lots in the collection that you can use as this, and they also work the same way. So let's make this little simple project here, a little fall one. And I'm going to show you how to do that. So let's ink that little container, and I'll just show you which one it is here. So in the rustic cabin set, it's this little one. And then we're also going to use this little branch from the branches set. And then back to our basic foliage, we're going to use the little grasses. And then in here, we're going to use these little, this little circle of hearts. So just those stamps, that's all it's going to take to put this together. So let's ink this up. We're gonna ink this with two colors. So we're gonna ink it first with the African violet, and then ink it again with that sepia. Sepia is that great color that's just in everything. Anything old and rustic, this is what really gives it depth. You can't really get this same look by using a gray marker or even a brown marker. You have to use a combination, or you have to use the sepia in some way. So now I've stamped it on my watercolor paper. Make sure you're using watercolor paper. And then remember how everything starts with a basic image and pulling the color out of the line. So dip your brush, pinch it off, and start out by pulling that color out underneath here where it would be really dark. And you can see these lines that are really close together. There's going to be a lot of color there. So those are all placed there on purpose. So let's go on to the next step, and let's put some color on our palette. This is that number 86 again. And we're going to add some color to the windows, and actually a little interest here. So take a little of this color and just add a little interest. Just use the tip of your brush and kind of brush in the shape of these windows with these little window panes. Okay, just like that. So let me just show you what that looked like before we pulled that color out of the lines. So you can see the difference. Just that first step of pulling the color out of the lines and then adding a little color to the roof, to the windows, you can see how that just changed everything. This is really the basis of your watercolor painting. And then the rest of it, the flowers and the foliage, that's just stamped on a repeat. And once you learn how to do that, you're kind of home free. It's just so easy and so fun. So let's add some trees now in the background, and we're going to do that with the sepia. There you go. We have used the flowers and foliages. So remember, these are the basic sets, basic flowers and foliage. If you want to do these projects, you want to start with these two. This is the grasses, little grasses that we use, the filler flowers. These are in everything. And this is the second set. So this is the new release now of the flowers and foliages. So here's those little circle hearts, the little long stems. These are in lots and lots of projects. And then as you go, you can add to it the branches, the structures. Here's another set of structures. Here's some littler ones. And then these, things like this, fir trees that you can build different scenes with. The little bunnies. So there are lots and lots of different sets in this series, and all of it goes together. All of it works together. All of it builds on what you already have. So you're really building a collection. And once you get a lot of different sets, wow, the sky is really the limit. So you can do lots and lots of really cool things. All of this available at Scrapbook.com. So be sure to shop there. Thanks so much for watching. If you like this video and want to see more from Scrapbook.com, please like, share, subscribe, and leave a message. Happy crafting!